Hello, beautiful beings, and welcome to your head noise episode of today. We love head noise episodes. This is where you guys send in what's going on in your fucking head, and we're here to fix it, unravel it, find a bit of an answer, find a solution, or at the very least, give you a different perspective to view your situation so you're able to kind of make better informed decisions. Sometimes we are too stuck in something that's going on, and this is the point of the head noise episode, that we need to have kind of someone else voice it and someone else talk about it for us to be like, oh my God, yeah, I can see it from a different angle now. I've been too in it. I haven't been able to remove myself from it. So that's kind of the point of these head noise episodes. Love them so much. We are doing the email head noise episode. If you're new to the podcast, bonjour firstly, but secondly, we have two kinds of head noise episodes. One is where people email in their questions, info@dyfmpod.com. Send through your questions at any time. We've had so many great ones come through, so thank you. Or we have the voice note head noise episodes as well. Just head to the website, dyfmpod.com, and you can submit a voice message. So I am not going to fuck around like I normally do, and we're going to go straight into it. I want to get through 4 questions, if possible, in today's episode. So let's begin. Let's dive straight in. So the title of this one is called Overthinking in a Healthy Relationship. Hi, Alexis. Big fan of the podcast. I've been listening since 2021 or 22. Congrats on the pregnancy and your twins. All the best to you and your family. Thank you. I've been grappling with an internal fear for a while, and I could use your advice. For context, I am 29, almost 30-year-old woman living in the US. My partner, 30-year-old male, and I have been together for almost a year and will move in together later this summer. He is the best man I have ever been with, and I feel so happy and safe with him. He checks all of my boxes. We're aligned on values and long-term goals, and he displays emotional maturity, accountability, good communication, etc. on all fronts. He is the best man I have ever been with, and I feel so happy and safe with him. He checks all of my boxes, and we're aligned on values, long-term goals, and he displays emotional maturity, accountability, good communication, etc. on all fronts. He has always been supportive and provided comfort when I've needed it. Where I keep worrying and psyching myself out is in thinking that things will take a turn for the worse after we move in together. I've read that abusive people don't always show their true colors until larger milestones. For example, moving in together, marriage, kids, or feeling like they are more settled. I've been in toxic relationships before that were clearly bad from the beginning and did a lot to heal from them. So I'd like to think that my personal healing allows me to better distinguish a good relationship from a bad one. My partner has never done anything that makes me hesitate to take this big step with him. He has always been kind and caring. I think I'm just stuck in my own worries and influenced by the bad relationship stories I have heard on social media and from my families. My mum was in multiple toxic relationships and marriages. I also struggled with self-esteem issues in the past that influenced my perspective and relationship choices. My question to you is, how can I get out of my own head and ground myself in reality versus what-if situations? How often do these personality flips really happen in healthy long-term relationships? Any advice and insight you can give would be so much appreciated. Okay, this is a really great question, and it's not one that I've had come through, I don't think ever, about this kind of situation. Now, let's address the final question that you had first. And you said, how often do these personality really flip in healthy relationships? Not that often, okay? When we're talking about a healthy relationship. Now, what we need to account for is that we ultimately cannot control somebody else. Things can happen in people's lives. Traumatic events can happen in people's lives. Huge upheavals or life changes that can cause someone to change. We can't ever know for sure. You could never have absolute certainty about what's going to happen. You could be in the best relationship ever, but in 10 years' time, you're divorced and married to someone else who you're absolutely in love with, and you can't fathom how that could be the case, right? There's so many things in life that happen along the way due to our experiences, due to how the relationship evolves, how we grow, that we just can't really have certainty over. So that's the first thing that you need to know. You can't have someone promise you that they're going to be the same person for the rest of their life, because all they can promise you is what they know now about themselves and about their morals and values and wants as a human. They can't speak for themselves in 10 years' time. They can't speak for themselves. I can't make my partner promise me that he will be in love with me in 20 years' time. I can't do that because that would be a fucking stupid promise to make, because we don't know how our lives are going to evolve and the influences that are going to happen and all of the above, okay? So what you can really focus on is what you get at face value and the relatively short-term future. Okay, so the next thing that I want to address is that you mentioned that you have read that a lot of people don't show their true colors. Where is it? You said abusive people don't always show their true colors until larger milestones. Now, you've been with this guy for a year. So while in a sense that's true, if we're talking about someone who's going to completely change their personality, it's okay. Let's talk about an abusive relationship where someone's trying to hook you in. They pretend to be somebody to get you to fall in love with them, whether it's love bombing, whether it's just your typical narcissist who, shows one side of them and then they show their true colors later on. That does happen, but it is very rare for someone to be able to sustain such good character for a full year. They're likely to have tried to move in with you a lot earlier, to have tried to manipulate you in different ways. What you're probably referring to is when people don't see the signs of what manipulation looks like, or the signs have been there, but they're not interpreting it as unhealthy signs until they're really in too deep, and then they're like, oh my God, this is a really abusive relationship that I've found myself in. And this normally happens because maybe they haven't been in a position to even realize the signs. Maybe they've never been in this kind of relationship before. Maybe, for example, one of the key things is to isolate you from your group. But if you're willing to be isolated, and if you're like, yep, I'm one of those people that can bail on all my friends and everyone, and just, you're probably not going to realize that this is a huge red flag because you're going along with it quite willingly. And it's not until later on that you're like, whoa, I can see all these signs that were happening. But you seem to have a really good understanding of what a toxic relationship is versus healthy. 1 year is a very long time. It's way too long for them to invest and pretend to be someone that they're not in order to see if they're able to manipulate you. That's just way too long, okay? So if you know the warning signs, like, are they trying to isolate me? Are they love bombing me? Have I noticed that they try and put me down when I do things that are related to just me as an individual? Like all these like little warning signs of how someone can be toxic. If you kind of can already look out for those warning signs, which it seems that you can, then you would have already seen these crop up. Now, So that's separate. So I don't think that if you have someone really healthy for a full year, they're not going to turn into a toxic person or a narcissist. You've seen their character, you've learnt their character, okay? What you might notice is that when you move in with someone, you realize that you actually don't align on certain things. That doesn't make them toxic, and it doesn't make the relationship toxic. But for example, what you need to know about before you move in with someone, and hopefully you have gathered this because you've spent time at their place, is, what are your standards like living at home? How capable are you of looking after yourself, or do you have expectations of me? What are your expectations of me when we move in? And what expectations should I have of you when we move in? And do we align on that? Like, there's a lot of conversations that you can have on, like, what's it going to look like when we move in? But as far as how they treat you and the underlying morals and values, that shouldn't change, okay? So, and then when you look at, when people flip with major milestones, like one thing that people have written to me a lot about is when people have kids and all of a sudden they're like, I just realized that my partner doesn't actually want to be a dad. They mentioned that they wanted kids, but the kids have come along and then they've never done anything. But this is also the same partner that isn't helpful with their wives when they're recovering from birth. It's the same partner that it's like, anyway, I'm going to go now, and they kind of leave the house. It's the same partner that still expected you to pick up after them when they're not pulling their weight in another way, at least. It's the same person. So a lot of people don't see the warning signs that already exist, right? They don't see that this person was never really exhibiting selfless behaviors within the relationship in the first place, whether they were a workaholic, whether they didn't really do anything for the greater good of the couple. Then you have kids and you're like, whoa, oh my God, they flipped. It's like, did they flip? Or are these behaviors now amplified? Okay. So you've got to ask yourself, do I understand my partner's character well enough? Do I think this person's going to flip and become toxic after a year? I doubt it. If they're not toxic in the first year, they're not going to be toxic. But one thing that you need to ask yourself is, are we aligned on coexisting together in the same household? Because that might piss you the fuck off. It doesn't make someone toxic, but it can make you fall out of love with someone if they're a slob, or if they're like expecting you to do more around the house than you do for them, but you still split the bills evenly, that kind of shit, okay? So in a nutshell, I think that you are psyching yourself out about this toxic thing. 1 year is it's a significant amount of time to understand if someone's going to try and manipulate you or be toxic or not. So the most that you can do is have those questions, sit him down before you move in and say, hey, I'm pumped about moving in together. I just want to know, what are your expectations of me? And vice versa. How would we split chores? How would these things look like? And then you can walk into this like quite comfortably. You know, for example, I do all the folding. I don't think Tyrone has ever folded one item of clothing. However, he cooks 99% of the meals in the household, right? So it's not about things being 50-50. Like, I have a private chef basically, and then I fold the clothes. Like, you can take full jobs off each other's hands so the other person doesn't have to think about that. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think you'll be fine. But yeah, thank you for writing in. Okay, second question. Hi, Alexis. Firstly, just wanted to say thank you for doing the podcast and sharing your knowledge. You've helped me in so many ways in the past year. You've become like a sister I never had. Thank you. I have a question related to self-esteem and feeling worthless at work. I had a pretty bad work experience a year ago where I was severely bullied at work, which is fucked, which ended up affecting my confidence and caused me anxiety at work. I thankfully left that place and I got some professional help, and I thought I've gone through it, but at the new workplace, I am noticing some thoughts I'm not used to. I noticed when I'm not invited to the meetings, but my colleague who is a level above me is, I feel left out. I start thinking if I had done something wrong, and I notice I'm starting to get into a petty place in my head. This is not normal for me, but then I also am noticing some jealousy appearing. My question is, how do I stop myself from thinking this way and prevent myself from getting into a rabbit hole of these thoughts and feelings? I know my boss values me, and even if I don't get tasks to do because someone else does, that doesn't mean I'm bad at my work. Are there any techniques that could help and stop intrusive thoughts overpower me and become bitter at work that I love? Thank you again. Okay, great question. I think that you are actually already halfway there, in the sense that you already have an awareness around these thoughts that you're having. So that's step one, to become aware of your thoughts. You know that just because someone else gets given a task and you don't get given a task, that is not a reflection of your work. You also know there's many, many things that you know, other than the things that you could actively be doing, because there's behaviors that you can do, and then there's training your thoughts. So let's talk about the behaviors first, which you've probably already done. The behaviors you can do is speak to your boss and say, I'm always willing to take on new tasks. If you're ever wondering, please ask me. I'm hungry to do more. I love being given more tasks. Like, show how keen you are, because a lot of the time, especially if it's a great boss, they're going to try and even out the workload. They're not going to put everything on you if they care about their staff. They're going to be like, all right, a little bit for you, a little bit for you. You know, I'm going to try and like even out the playing field. But if one staff member is coming up being like, I want more, give me more, I'm keen, get me on this project, get me working on that, they're going to be like, oh, I didn't realize you wanted to be across more things. Great. I'll keep that in mind. You know, so that behaviorally, I would do that, just in case you haven't already done that, because then it gives your boss that like, okay, yeah, awesome. And the beauty of that is, if your boss doesn't think you're ready, it gives you an opportunity to have that conversation, because your boss could be like, you know what, I'm so happy you said that. However, I'm just waiting for you to be here another 6 months just so you're a bit more experienced, and then I know you'll have it, and then I'll be able, like, but regardless, you're going to be either given more work or you're going to get that nice feedback of kind of where your boss sees you at and when they can start giving you more work, okay? And then if they say, oh, it'll be another 6 months, then that can open it up for you to be like, great, what would be the milestones that you would need to see me hit in order to be able to work on these things? So that way it's tangible, it's measurable. And then that could be like, yeah, right, I would like to see whatever. They'll be able to give you an exact, like what I need to see from you in order to this. Or they just might start giving you more work, all right? So that's behaviorally what I would do. That way it's open communication, everyone's across the same thing at the same time. Mentally, it's exactly what you're already doing. You are just rewriting your thoughts as they're happening. We will have an automatic thought which occurs based on conditioning, and your conditioning was heavily like locked in your old job because you were bullied, you felt really shit about yourself, you were made to, like, it really took a blow to your self-esteem. And those things, especially things that are really heightened in emotions, really lock in that conditioning. Anything that's layered with intense emotions kind of solidifies a memory pretty fucking strong. So you're aware of that, right? So you just have to say, I've been conditioned. Now I'm going to recondition myself in a different way. And the best way to do that is through rewriting. So when you have those thoughts, and you're going to keep having them for a time period, not forever, but for a time period. You see your colleague get pulled in, name the thoughts. Just say, oh, I'm feeling what I used to feel in my old job. I feel left out. I feel excluded. I feel jealous. I feel all these things. And then dig a little bit deeper, but more analytical. Be like, okay, where's the jealousy coming from? Why is that? Would I think that my colleague would feel jealous if I was the one pulled into the meeting? Would I think that would be fair? Would I feel bad for my colleague, or would I think, no, like there's some jobs that I do and some jobs that... So you start to rationalize these thoughts and you think, well, no, I wouldn't, because it makes sense that people are pulled in for different reasons. The whole team doesn't have to be across everything. Then you start to think, why would they, when they have a meeting without me, it's got nothing to do with me. It's got to do with the project that they're working on, of course. So then you start to ease those thoughts of like, oh my God, they're excluding me, to being like, oh, yep, they're just bringing in the relevant people for that thing. And it is just that. Every time you come up with it, you come up with at least 3 counter thoughts that start to take you off that ledge. Being like, here's a logical thought, here's a logical thought, here's the logical thought. And then you think, yeah, of course. Now I feel a lot better. And then you do it again and again and again. The main thing, the main thing is nip it in the bud. The moment you start to feel these emotions come up, name it. Being like, oof, I'm getting this feeling that I used to feel in my old job. Now let's go through that exercise. And you do it again and you do it again. And I can guarantee you will start to notice crazy improvements. And the reason for that is often these emotions and feelings go unchecked. We let them like, oh my God, they feel so bad that we think that addressing them is going to be more painful than just ignoring them. But ignoring them is actually more painful. And the reason for that is when you start to feel this anxiety come up, like they've been put into a meeting, now I'm anxious. What our initial stages is that anxiety feels so unpleasant, I'm going to try and suppress it. So then you're suppressing the anxiety, you're trying to distract, you're trying to do things, you go and like make yourself a coffee, and before you know it, you've got this underlying anxiety through everything you're doing. It feels awful physically, but you're not addressing it. So it's actually bleeding into every other area of your life. And we think that if we address it, the anxiety will be catastrophic, but it's the opposite. When you shed light on it, you put a spotlight on it, it can't grow any further. You are staring at it and then it starts to shrink. That's with like any negative feeling, a fear, an anxiety, or whatever. It's, as long as you're not catastrophizing, it's I'm pausing and I'm observing, not, oh my God, I'm anxious now, let's think of another 10 anxious thoughts. It's the difference is I'm looking at it logically and saying, okay, what am I anxious about exactly? Why do I think I'm anxious about this? Because of how I've been conditioned with my old job. Yep, cool. And then what are reasons why this wouldn't be the case? Let's try and, do it again and again and again and again. Don't avoid the feelings. And I can guarantee you in a few weeks, you'll start to notice a difference. And in a few months, you'll be like, I'm a different person altogether when it comes to addressing these feelings. Thank you for sending that in. Okay, next question. I love my partner. He doesn't want another child. Ooh. Hi, Alexis. I feel really heavy Last night I spoke with my partner and we basically split ways. We've been together 1 year and 5 months. Ever since we got together, I told him up front I wanted another child. So I'm guessing you have a kid and I wanted another child. He said he would be open to it. P.S. He has already had a vasectomy and he has 2 kids already. So he's got 2 kids, you got 1, and then you got together. Okay. I just wanted 1 more, as I've always dreamed to have more than 1. And so my daughter has a sibling, as I didn't. A few months ago, he said he decided he definitely doesn't want one now. And ever since, I've been processing it and have come to terms now with the fact that I already resent him. It hurts seeing how good of a dad he already is and that I don't get to experience this with him. But I'm so scared to leave him. He's been the first relationship I've ever had where he's treated me so well, and just the same for our whole relationship. He was one that brought me flowers every now and then out of nowhere. We have trust in each other. He was not toxic, and he just had his life together in the same ways that I do. We have the same future goals except for this major one. I'm really struggling with my choice, and I can't decide if he is it and if I should give up on the idea for him, or if someday I will find someone that treats me like he did and want another child. It feels like it's too good to be true, and the unknown is scary. Thank you. This is a really difficult decision for you to make. It's a really, really difficult decision because, firstly, okay, let's put aside the fact that it sucks that he said he was open to it and then he changed his mind and turned around, because had he said this from the very get-go, you probably wouldn't have gone down this path and fallen in love with him and all of that, because you would have been like, well, I'm not going to entertain this. But people change their minds, as whatever. It is what it is. Let's deal with what's happening right now. That's the only thing that we can have some semblance of control over. And you don't want to psych yourself out thinking, well, why did he? Why didn't he? Why? What's done is done. So let's talk about you saying, I can't decide if he is it and if I should give up on the idea of him. He's now told you where he's at. He is clear on the fact that now he's made up his mind and he doesn't want children. And I think that he had actually made up that decision if he's had a vasectomy, he's probably always been on that side, leaning towards that side. He obviously was very sure he didn't want to have kids again when he had the vasectomy. Then he met you, probably got all starry-eyed, got all excited, but deep down his underlying thing was I'm probably never going to have any more of my own kids again, okay? And now he's really thought it again, being like, no, I'm back to my original belief that I don't want kids. So I believe, based on the fact that he has a vasectomy and based on the fact that he's, it's been the year and he's told you this, that he's probably sure about that. So it's not about giving up on him or trying harder or whatever. What you see is what you get. So you've got he will not change. Imagine that. Whether he changes or not is irrelevant. We're looking at face value, what we get, and he's opened up to you and he's being honest. So I don't think it's about giving up on him or whatever. You've got to look at what is my ultimate non-negotiable. What to me is a thing that I need to work towards, and I need to do whatever I can to have that thing. And if for you it's having the second child, then he's just not part of that, unfortunately. And that's a really hard call to make, but that is the reality of the situation, okay? Because like you said, you were already starting to resent him because he's not the perfect partner if you are resenting him. Someone cannot be the perfect partner if you just cannot get rid of this resentment, being like, there's this major thing in my life that I really feel like I have to have in order for me to feel fulfilled and happy and I want my child to have a sibling. Whatever your personal reasons are, if this is so important to you, you will resent him staying with him. Guaranteed. So you've got to ask yourself, is it possible for me to let go of that idea of having the second child? It doesn't seem like it, and nor should you have to. I'm just asking you questions. I'm throwing it out there for you to start to. But if you're like, you know what? I can imagine a life where I just have the one kid. I can imagine the life where, and it's actually doable and it's actually beautiful for all these reasons. But from what I gather, that's not where your head is at. So in my opinion, I think you've done the right thing. When it comes to children, I think children are pretty non-negotiable in that regard. Someone should never negotiate into having kids if they don't want kids. Bad fucking idea. And you shouldn't do it the other way around either. You shouldn't not have children because someone else doesn't want you to have children. Like, that's also terrible. I think this is just kids are probably one of the biggest life-changing decisions that you ever make, if not the biggest, alongside who you choose to be with. That it's not something that someone else can really influence you one way or the other, purely because you end up resenting them and you end up feeling like your life's been kind of railroaded into a different direction that you never wanted. So as difficult as it is, I actually think you've made the right decision. You've parted ways. It really hurts. Of course it hurts, because you were with a good partner, and that's nice. Is it possible for you to find a great partner again? Of course it is. Of course it's possible. Don't live in this mindset of scarcity. Will it take, like, how long will that take? We don't know. But I also think that if you've still got this dream of having the second child, being with him won't be as beautiful as you think it is, no matter how nice he is, because you will resent him. You'll resent him, and then worse, later down the track, you will resent yourself for not listening to your gut and not doing what you wanted to do to have a second child. Okay? You will kick yourself, and resenting yourself down the line is so difficult to let go of. It's so difficult because it's like, I knew at the time that I didn't want to be in this situation, and I pushed past anyway. I didn't listen to myself. You're listening to yourself right now. And as painful as it is, you are doing what is within your power to try and make your like deepest desire in life happen. And I think that that's really strong and difficult, but it's the first step to get to where you want in your life. And, it's hard, but you're doing it. And that's all I can say. I think you've made the right decision. All right. Last question. She says it's just a rental. I say it's a red flag in a red house. These titles are fucking great. I'm very excited to read this. Hi, Alexis. I'd love your takeaway on something that's really been eating away at me. I live with my best friend. Let's call her Liv. I love this because my best friend is Liv. Let's call her Liv. And she recently made a decision that changed our friendship. A few years ago, she broke up with her ex. Let's call him Ryan. At the time, he seemed all right, but there were some real misalignments, ongoing drug use, lack of quality time, and emotional distance. She made the tough choice to walk away after lots of patience and missed deadlines with him. After the breakup, they briefly tried again, but it ended up in manipulation, emotional trauma, and a pregnancy she terminated after he pressured her to. He didn't show up for her, and 2 months later, he got someone else pregnant and stayed with them. I supported her through all of it, the heartbreak, the grief, the aftermath. Since then, she's kept quiet. She's quietly kept him in her life. She's lied about seeing him, gotten defensive when I gently bring up my concerns, and more recently, had him at our house without telling me. Now, she's moving into a rental on his parents' property. She swears it's purely practical. He won't be around, the rent's cheap, and she wants a space where her niece and nephew can visit. Her family supports it. To her, it's a fresh start. To me, it looks like a slow slide back into something that already broke her. I told her I need to take a step back from our friendship, not because I don't care, but because I do. She says I'm judging her and that she would support me if the roles were reversed. But the truth is, I don't trust her right now. I don't trust the decisions she's making or that she's being honest with herself. And on top of all of that, her leaving early means I'm left scrambling to find a new flatmate, dealing with the landlord and trying to cover rising costs. I didn't ask for this chaos and it's affecting me too. So my question is, am I overreacting for pulling away from someone I love because I can't keep watching her repeat this cycle? Or am I the only one being honest about the impact this has on her and on our relationship? Would really love your thoughts. Okay, I actually think there's two separate things going on here that you need to address. The first thing that we're going to address is the second part that you said, is that her leaving early means you are scrambling to find a new flatmate, dealing with the landlord. That's her responsibility. Let's put aside the second part, which we're going to address in a second. She can't leave you fucking high and dry. If you're both, I don't know, maybe you're not, but if you were both on the lease, this is her responsibility to find the new flatmate and to replace and to whatever and all of that, okay? She needs to step in and own her shit. If she's going to move out early, she needs to make up for the fact that she's leaving you high and dry. That's just what a normal person would do, but then lay it on top of that as a friend. If I was moving out of my friend's place, there's no way in hell I would do that without already having an alternative person moved in so there's no financial strain on my friend, okay? So even if I wasn't on the lease, I would just never do that to a friend of mine. That would be so fucked up. because you both obviously agreed to live in the same place. You've made an agreement. So that's really important. I think you need to, that in and of itself should be addressed separately to your feelings about what's happening, on the side. So I don't know the details of it. I don't know who exactly is on the lease, but this is also adding to your frustration. And try your best to look at them as two individual things for the sake of the advice that I'm giving you. But yeah, it's putting you in financial strain, potentially financial strain. You said you're trying to cover rising costs. That's just absolutely not fair. And that is enough to turn you off your friend in and of itself. If my friend bailed on me and left me high and dry and then I was covering the costs, I'd be pissed off, not to mention everything else that's going on. So that's one thing that needs to be addressed, because that's just like poor behavior on her end. Now let's address what's going on. You're saying you need to take a step back from the friendship and all of that. You're saying that she's not being honest with herself and all of this. Look, unfortunately, it is not our responsibility to ensure that our friends are honest with themselves. I have watched so many of my friends make very unhealthy decisions for themselves repeatedly, okay? But I also value everything else that comes with this friendship. So for me, with my friends, they could go down a bad path with someone again and again and again, and I would never walk away from them. I would try my best to get them to see the light. I would also not necessarily be their sounding board every time. Like there's been times where with certain friends I've said, you know what? I think you need a new perspective other than mine, because I've given you my perspective and you've come to me asking for advice. You've not come to me to vent. You've come to me asking for advice, and I try and help you out, but it's kind of the same repeated pattern. So I'm here for you always, love you so much. However, I think you need to broaden who you seek advice from, because I can't actually help you here, because I've given you everything I can in my knowledge book to try and help you, but it doesn't resonate with you, which is perfectly okay. But basically politely stop coming to me with the same fucking drama again and again and again, asking for advice, okay? If you need a shoulder to cry on, if you need help, of course I'm going to be there for you. We're friends. But, broaden where you're getting advice from, because what I say doesn't resonate with you, which is absolutely perfectly fine. So I wouldn't walk away from my friends even if I'm like, you're making a detrimental decision for yourself. I would walk away from my friends if I thought that they were abandoning the friendship and they were being a bad friend. So you've got to ask yourself, is this person being a bad friend? Because another thing that's really important to note when it comes to friendships is people will get themselves into really unhealthy relationships with really unhealthy people. And the perpetrator, the toxic person, is going to do everything in their power to isolate them from their inner circle, from their friends, so they can have their way and manipulate this person even further and get them to where they want to be, okay? If I can see the warning signs of that in a friend, the last thing I'm going to do is walk away. The last thing I'm going to do. I might have to distance myself a little bit. I might have to draw some boundaries around, I don't want to be around that person. You can do that. You can do things to protect yourself. I don't want him coming over. I don't feel comfortable. There's many things you can do to set boundaries. You don't have to be as close. But also be aware that sometimes the tactic is that, you also don't want to isolate your friend if you think that they're entering a relationship with someone quite unhealthy, because then they're less likely to leave. Not that I don't even think she's dating this guy. She's just really inserting herself in his life and vice versa. So you've just got to ask yourself, am I pissed off because I'm frustrated that she just can't see the reality of what's going on and I just can't handle, or is she being a bad friend? Because if she on top of that is being a shit friend, then of course you can walk away and feel fine about it. You're like, this person has not respected me as a friend. They're leaving me high and dry with the rent. They're doing all these things. So independent of the fact that she's not being honest with herself, she's actually being a shit friend. She's being disrespectful to me. She's not thought about, my financial status with the moving out and all of these things. So yeah, I can step away from this friendship. Okay. So I feel like it's quite layered, but when it comes to this, I would only ever walk away from a friendship if the person is being a bad friend. But if they are not being honest with themselves, It's not my job to punish them. It's not my job to teach them a life lesson or to lecture them. It is my job as a friend to, at best, influence them and help them whenever possible. Okay. But I think, and we had a head noise question recently about being the righteous friend. Sometimes we get so swept up in what's right and what's wrong, and we forget that we've also been swept up in so many deep emotions where we've lost all semblance of what is right and what is wrong for the sake of a romantic relationship. Like, we've all been there. We've all made fucked up decisions. And you know, I've dated some fuckwits. And imagine if my friends left me because they're like, yeah, you just don't see what you do. And they abandoned me when I was with these fuckwits. That would just be devastated, right? So I would never do that to my friends. So I think you've just got to look at it as two individual things. Are they a good friend to you, but they're just making stupid decisions? And then I would maintain the friendship personally. Are they just being a shit cunt? And on top of that, they're making stupid decisions. Then you walk away, okay? Guys, thank you so much for sending in these questions. They're great questions. Love them so much. At the very least, I just hope I've given you some food for thought so you can kind of like really think it through, look at it hopefully from a different angle, and it helps you make the most informed decision that you can make about what you're going through right now. That is all for today's episode. Thanks so much, guys. Love you so much. As always, remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to your brain. Don't take shit from anyone, and especially don't take shit from yourself. Danke.